Hello and welcome back to Schlyde into Sports, live on 103.1 FM on WVLP Radio. I'm your host, Ryan Schlyde, aka Schlyde, and last week I completely forgot to talk more about the college jersey patch story, which has an update. Actually, there is news regarding that, so it's in a way it's kind of good that I waited a little bit on that unintentionally. But here, normally we talk about the rules and regulations of college sports and their trickle-down effect into other sports with it, like all the sports within college. A lot of the rules tend to be talked about in the sense of like football and basketball. And we try to go a little bit deeper than just the baseline there. But we also talk about relevant outcomes and any other relevant current events in college sports as well. Today, just like I said about 10 seconds ago, we are going to be talking about the jersey patch story. There is an update on that with Notre Dame signing a new deal. We also have an update on the Protect College Sports Act. It was almost gone. The bill was almost going to be killed, but the Big Ten and SEC, they liked what was on the text, and so now it's back, and now we're just waiting for Congress and the Senate to pass other things before it goes into cloture. And the IU versus Notre Dame home and home series gets canceled in favor of Notre Dame and USC having their rivalry renewed in 2030, from 2030 to 2034. All right, so with that being said, let's just hop right into the IU home and home with Notre Dame series being canceled, because I think, just looking at it on a, not necessarily just, like a game being canceled, but in terms of college football and the way that it is going. I mean, you look at IU versus Notre Dame, these two teams have barely played each other. They practically never play each other in the regular season. Last time that IU and Notre Dame met was obviously in the 2024 college football playoffs in South Bend, where Notre Dame won 27-17. But besides that, these two teams hardly ever meet. I mean, the last time that IU beat Notre Dame was in 1950, and the last time that Notre Dame and IU played in the regular season was like in the, I think, 1990. It was in 1991, where Notre Dame won 49-27. So ever since this, not even decade, but ever since this century, Notre Dame and Indiana just don't really play each other in the regular season. I mean, you look at the record that Indiana has over Notre Dame, it's 5-24-1 all-time record. So, back in the 1900s, we used to play them a decent amount, but, not so much anymore. And, looking at, even since the 2024 college football playoffs, the rivalry between Notre Dame and Indiana has been quite interesting, because a lot of the times when people are college fans in Indiana, a lot of them will say that they root for Notre Dame football, but root for Indiana basketball. And now that Indiana has a good football team, now it's kind of tearing up the fabric of what the old world used to be. And now, people are being forced to pick sides, whether it's Indiana or whether it's Notre Dame. And, I used to be one of those people a little bit, but now I'm an Indiana person because, I went to Indiana, so obviously I'm going to root for my school, but also I've always kind of had a little bit of a soft spot for Indiana football anyways. So, I mean, the transition wasn't too difficult, to be completely honest, but I will say it is, these are both two really good teams, and if they started playing each other in the regular season sooner after the college football playoff game in South Bend in 2024, I think, it could have led to the birth of a new rivalry, a modern day rivalry, and probably the best modern day rivalry in the history of modern day rivalries. And I mean, I'm not necessarily trying to glaze or anything, but it's true. I mean, Indiana versus Notre Dame would have become the best modern day rivalry in all of college football. I mean, because you look at some of the other rivalries like Texas A&M and Texas, that's a old rivalry that runs deep, that's deep in history. Ohio State, Michigan, same deal. BYU, Utah, USC, Notre Dame, those are all deeply rooted in college football history. But IU versus Notre Dame, there wasn't really anything there before, but with NIL and this new expanded playoff era of college football, it's allowed for new rivalries like this to come about, or at least have the opportunity to come about, since the home and home series got canceled at the end of the day. I do think, like, when I was looking at the story, a lot of people are saying that, or at least national media is saying that IU is ducking Notre Dame and that IU requested the cancellation of the home and home series. And they're basing that off the fact that Cignetti has canceled games against Virginia and Louisville in the past, opting to not play tougher non-conference opponents, because why make the schedule more difficult when you're playing in the Big Ten Conference? However, I don't necessarily think this is true, because more and more colleges are starting to move towards playing 10 Power 4 teams, and Indiana was going to be on track to do that along with everybody else with the scheduling of Notre Dame versus Indiana in 2030. So I don't necessarily think that whole narrative is true. I think that's just something that people are putting out there because Sig made people mad by what he said about the SEC in the Big Ten media days, where he basically called them a bunch of crybabies. And to be honest, I don't think they can really be all that mad, because the SEC's biggest flag bearer, Paul Feinbaum, even agreed with what Cignetti said and said that, yeah, they are being a bit crybaby-ish. Like they're just not, like, they're doing a lot of talking, but they're just not proving it on the field. And he acknowledged that the SEC needs to start proving it more on the field, at least recently. Yes, the SEC has succeeded in the past and pre-NIL and all that, but this is a new era. And if you get stuck in the past, you're going to be stuck in cement, and you're not going to be able to move forward, and ultimately you're going to fall behind. And that also goes into what people have said, or the jokes that people make about the SEC seceding from college football to have their own league, or seceding from not even just college football, but just college sports in general, the NCAA, and doing their own league. And last week I went into kind of what that would be like for the SEC, how it would hurt not only the SEC but also the NCAA, because I do think that both the SEC and NCAA do need each other to coexist. There is a lot of historic programs that are in the SEC, but if, kind of like with when people talk about the NBA and NFL, where they're not, like, they say that they're world champs for, like, on their t-shirts and stuff, even though most, if not all, the teams are in the United States of America. So how can you be world champs when you're primarily either in the United States or just in North America? And that's really mainly and I only really say that last part due to Toronto being in Canada and having a team in the NBA. Like, I think the NBA has a little bit more of a, what's it called? Like a claim, I guess, to a world title, just because they have teams that are, I guess they have a team that is outside of the United States. I will also say the NBA does have a lot more international players. They do have, they have Wembanyama, they have Dylan Brooks, they have Kawhi Leonard. They have a bunch of international, like Jokic, Luka Doncic. they have a bunch of international guys on each of the teams, and the NBA is regarded as the best league in the world when it comes to basketball. So it's understandable that the NBA can lay claims to a world title. NFL, not so much, because most of the players are from the United States. There are some that do come in from Canada and other places, but a majority of the players that play in the NFL are in the United States. So, there's not really a claim there for a world title. Like the NBA, the NFL is the best football league in the world, but that's mostly due in part because we invented the sport. It's like it wasn't an international thing. The NFL has been on this quest the past, I'd say probably 20 years to try to grow the game. They are having games a lot more places, Mexico City, Rio de Janeiro, London, Munich. Like they're having it in all kinds of places to spread the sport of American football around everywhere. But anyway, I'm getting a little bit sidetracked. Now that I'm thinking about it, I went on a bit of a tangent there about football and its origins and tradition and the SEC and all that. But back to IU versus Notre Dame. This would have been an insane rivalry to have in the regular season. This could have done so much for the sport of football in the state of Indiana. IU football being good is one thing, but also having an in-state rivalry against another elite football program like Notre Dame within your state it's great for the sport. It's great for the sport's growth within the state of Indiana. You look at like Texas A&M and Texas. That is a historic rivalry, like two elite football teams within the state relatively consistently now playing each other once a year. That's also one that is sort of considered a new rivalry if you think about it, just because that rivalry was put on pause when Texas left the Big 12 for the SEC. Texas A&M left the Big 12 for the SEC. Both of those schools were in separate conferences for a while. Then Texas jumped to the SEC, and now that they're both in the same conference, that is the rivalry game that the SEC gave to Texas when they entered the conference. So now Texas and Texas A&M will be playing each other every single year. It's not necessarily a created rivalry, but it's a restored rivalry. So I think that in and of itself is pretty cool, in my opinion. And I think, I feel like we missed out on a new rivalry being born in favor of just keeping the old rivalries. I think with USC and Notre Dame, at least the past 5 years, Notre Dame has dominated the rivalry the past 5 years. They've won the past 3 in a row, and it hasn't really been very close. And this has really been ever since Lincoln Riley has taken over at USC. And USC becomes overrated every single year, and I think part of it is just to get more money to Notre Dame, so that way, Notre Dame and USC, they're playing each other ranked, and it makes, it adds to the rivalry and all that. But ever since USC chickened out from signing anything because they were upset about how their schedule was, and it's like, just play your games, USC, come on. But they got really upset about the way that their schedule would have to work, playing 9 Big Ten games and Notre Dame. Like, they're like, oh, that's too much. But again, like I said a little bit earlier, more teams are starting to move towards 10 Power 4 conference opponents. And Notre Dame would have been that 10th team consistently for USC, and they would not have had to schedule anybody else. And if anything, USC would have been ahead of the curve. But no, that's not what USC decided to do. And instead, they decided to kill their rivalry for a little bit. And now, I think when it does get re-restored, I think USC is going to be even further behind. And that's going to kind of lead into the next story later, and I'll go into why USC is going to be even more behind than they were before, because there is, I will say at least one thing about USC falling a little bit behind Notre Dame, or at least more so now. Notre Dame recently just had an upgraded equipment room and locker room. They upgraded all of it. University didn't have to spend a single penny. It was all alumni that contributed to the donation, but it was like $117 million renovating the old weight room and the locker rooms. And that's something that recruits have talked about in the past as to why they don't go to Notre Dame is because of their outdated equipment and, the outdated locker rooms. But that's not really an issue anymore. And Marcus Freeman has been able to recruit a lot of high-level elite talent to Notre Dame, despite those two things being a setback. And now, with those things being upgraded, I think Notre Dame is going to have a huge, huge advantage in the future of college football. And again, I'm going to go a little bit more into that later, because it is it just keeps getting better and better for Notre Dame. And people talk about how the Big Ten has thrived in this era of NIL, but Notre Dame has also thrived in this era of NIL. And I think part of the reason why not a lot of people have been talking about Notre Dame thriving in this era is because they were already thriving pre-NIL. That's largely due to their broadcasting deal with NBC, the fact that they're an independent college football school. Like, both of those things kind of go hand in hand in terms of Notre Dame's continual success, at least in terms of bringing in the money, bringing in the bag, so to speak. And now, that investment of bringing in the bag is paying off in this era of NIL. Now they're investing in the equipment room, in the locker room, probably, maybe soon the football field. Who knows? Maybe they make some renovations to the football field. I doubt it, because that is one of the most iconic stadiums in college football. I doubt that they make any sort of changes to that. But there's a lot of things that are currently going right in South Bend. And I think, canceling this game against Indiana, some people are saying that Indiana's being chicken because we lost to Notre Dame in the college football playoffs in 2024. But I don't necessarily think so. I mean, you look at Notre Dame's schedule. Their biggest challenges are Miami and BYU, and that's pretty much it. I mean, those are really tough schools, but you look at the other schools that they are playing this year, and it's not necessarily challenging per se. At least some people would say. I think there's some games that I think could be sneaky. You've got Wisconsin, which I'm more or less saying that's sneaky just because Wisconsin did make some decent offseason moves. The game is in Wisconsin. It's week 1. It is an upset that could very well happen. We have seen weirder before. I mean, look at last year. We saw Alabama get not just lose, but get crushed by Florida State. That was very surprising. Florida State, that one year after I think it was 2024, when it was the year after Florida State made it to, or almost made it to, the last four-team college football playoff, and they lost to Georgia Tech in Ireland. That was also another shocking outcome. Like, week 1 has shocking outcomes between Power 4 opponents, and this one is one where it could be a shocking result. But then they play Rice, they play Michigan State, they play Purdue, and it's like Michigan State, Purdue are both Big Ten schools. Obviously, I think Michigan State is definitely better than Purdue, at least. Purdue hasn't been good at football for a while now. Really not since the Drew Brees era, but they have at least been better than IU football more consistently. I mean, if you take away the last 2 years, Purdue football has been better. Then Notre Dame plays North Carolina. Who knows how North Carolina is going to look this year? I mean, with Bill Belichick, it was really a lackluster year for North Carolina last year, and I think Notre Dame will probably end up running through them, and then they play Notre Dame host Stanford, which I don't think that's going to be that challenging of a game either. Frankly, Stanford has not been good since Christian McCaffrey was there. Then Notre Dame, after that, Notre Dame plays BYU, then they play Navy, then they play Miami, then Boston College. I guess SMU is a pretty tough game. They still have their starting quarterback from the last couple of years, Jennings. And then they play Syracuse at the very end of the year, Thanksgiving weekend. And Syracuse could be one where it's sneaky just because they do have Angeli at quarterback, and he used to be at Notre Dame. He transferred out of Notre Dame. So he actually got injured last year, and that's why Syracuse ended up doing so terribly. But if he stays healthy for that Notre Dame game, who knows what happens at the end of the year. He could ball out for the sake of, taking down his former team, but it really depends on what Syracuse has built around him. But for the most part, I would say Notre Dame's schedule is very manageable. Maybe 2 losses, but I think besides that, I think they pretty much win out for the most part. But I think Notre Dame should make the college football playoff this year. I think they'll definitely be hungry to make the college football playoff this year. That is for sure. That is for sure. But yeah. Overall, I'd say I'm just bummed that this is not happening because I wanted it to happen so badly. And I think, honestly, like if sports were scripted, I think this would just be great symbolism in terms of, the turning of the guard when it comes to rivalries, and just showing that, new modern rivalries can exist in the world of college football. And the reason why that's so important is because, kind of going back to the little tangent that I went on earlier, talking about this IU versus Notre Dame home and home series being canceled story, with, talking about the SEC, the NBA, the NFL, like that whole tangent, I think it would at least show that, college football, which is a sport that's rooted very deep in tradition, in the old rivalries, the way the regular season is run, like it's very traditional. It's very, very traditional. And people in college football want it to be the same for as long as possible. And I think the one thing that I've been okay with changing is the playoffs and the way that the playoffs work. I think they definitely still need to fix how it works. I don't necessarily like some of the changes that they are making in terms of how long teams have to wait to play each other and how long timeline-wise the playoff is. But otherwise, I'd say, the expansion of the number of teams, I think, is a good thing. And it has been a good thing for the most part. But, yeah, I think if Indiana and Notre Dame were able to get a consistent series going, it could birth a modern-day rivalry that could rival even some of the best rivalries, like the ones that I mentioned before. Ohio State, Michigan, Utah, BYU, USC, UCLA, Oregon, Washington, North Carolina, NC State, Clemson, South Carolina. I mean, it could rival all of those if it just had the chance in the regular season to do so. But yeah, that's just kind of where I'm at with that. I mean, if anything, replace Purdue, just put Notre Dame in. Like, we could switch out Purdue. I don't care. I think that at least IU versus Notre Dame right now would be a a lot more entertaining. But yeah, I mean, Notre Dame plays Purdue more consistently. I mean, you could argue that Notre Dame's been avoiding IU this whole time. I mean, it wouldn't be a serious argument, but it would be an argument. It would be an argument that would exist. But yeah, definitely not a very serious argument. But yeah, before we talk a little bit more about Notre Dame and how, they just keep winning financially in college football, the patches story, and that's a whole other thing. I cannot wait to get into the patches. And the update on the Protect College Sports Act, we're going to take a quick little break and hear a message from our sponsor. This broadcast is brought to you by Authentic Impact, a Northwest Indiana executive coaching practice working with family businesses to ensure their legacy. When you started your business, you made a promise to do things differently, better than anyone else. Over time, as the business grows, that promise can get diluted or even lost. Penny Schlyde at Authentic Impact helps family business owners reignite that promise, weaving it into team engagement, performance, and hiring so your passion becomes the heartbeat of your company again. Learn more at authentic-impact-coaching.com. Okay, so the patches story. We're going to get into that first. And this is how we're going to tie what I was talking about previously with Notre Dame into the patches story. So like I said before, Notre Dame had a big, check that was given to them to update their equipment, their weight room and their locker room. But that's not the only way that they got money. So Notre Dame just announced a $20 million per year partnership with SoFi, which as of right now is the largest deal to date through the majority of the college football patch deals that have been signed so far. Not everybody has signed deals to get patches, but more and more of them are starting to become a thing. The previous largest deal was Ohio State and JP Morgan Chase with a $17 million per year agreement that they had. And that was for a patch for all 36 of Ohio State's men and women's athletic programs. So that, football, men's basketball, women's basketball, men's swimming and diving, women's swimming and diving, men's track, women's track, etc. All the sports that Ohio State has, all 36 of them. JP Morgan is giving $17 million a year to all of them. So a lot of people have been, or at least, before the Notre Dame deal, a lot of people were reacting online to Ohio State's jersey patch deal. And one of the things that was mentioned was the comparison to the Big 12's deal, where every Big 12, so the Big 12 conference signed a deal with Monster, which was, I think it was $18 million per year. It's however many teams are in the Big 12 conference, which I believe the number is 18. It's either 18 or 16. I'm 90%, I'm pretty sure it's 18 though. But the 18 schools in the Big 12 conference each get $1 million because the Big 12 signed a deal worth $18 million. So all that money just got divided up, and people were like, wow, Ohio State just completely outdid the Big 12. The Big 12 is only giving $1 million per school. With this deal, Ohio State is getting $17 million per year on its own. And in retrospect, just looking at it, you're like, wow, that is a lot. But it becomes even worse when you look at it in terms of spreading it amongst all the sports. Ohio State has $17 million just with this deal with JP Morgan Chase per year with every single sport. That's $17 million that is spread amongst the 36 sports and athletic programs. The Big 12, each school has $1 million that they are able to disperse amongst all of their athletic programs. So, just painting a picture here. Oh, the Big 12 got $18 million per year with Monster. You have to disperse that equally amongst all the Big 12 schools. They do. Each Big 12 school gets $1 million. Now here, you look at Ohio State's athletic department. Ohio State has 36 men's and women's athletic programs. Pretty much multiply that number by, I'd say 16, because I think some of the Big 12 schools have smaller athletic departments. So Ohio State is one of the biggest athletic departments in the entire country. So, take, let's say 15 and multiply it by 36. And that'll probably be the equivalent of the amount of sports that $20 million would have to be divided amongst. That is not a lot of money per sport within the entire Big 12 conference. And I think that is why people are saying that Ohio State outdid the Big 12. And frankly, they did. And, just looking at the math that I kind of did, I didn't even say the number, I was just kind of painting a picture. But, just looking at it in that sense, it's like, wow, Ohio State really outdid the Big 12 just with a singular athletic department. And frankly, if I'm a Big 12 member school, I'm thinking to myself, we need to get this Big 12 commissioner out of here. What has he done? What was this decision? And this was one of the first patch deals that came out. And, I think people were like, oh, that's not too bad. But then, once schools started making deals on their own, like Ohio State, people were like, oh, that was not a good deal. They were like, oh, that was not very good. But some other schools in the Big Ten that made some deals, Illinois made a deal with Busy Bank. They reached a 5-year, $30 million agreement. So that's $30 million over 5 years amongst all of their athletic departments. So Busy Bank will see its logos on the jerseys of the following Fighting Illini teams: football, men's and women's basketball, volleyball, baseball, soccer, men's and women's golf. That's where you're going to see Busy Bank, which I don't think that's all of Illinois' athletic programs, but it's a lot. It's their prominent ones, that's for sure. But that is something also to note. The money sometimes goes to all, sometimes it does not go to all athletic programs. So, yeah. It really depends on which jerseys or uniforms or suits have the logo or the patch on the uniform. But yeah, it also says that Busy Bank branding will also appear on apparel worn by prominent Illinois coaches, including football coach Brett Bielema. So when you see Brett Bielema on the sideline at an Illini game, and he's wearing his quarter zip with the Illini logo, I believe, on his upper left, you're probably going to see a different logo on the upper right of his chest with the Busy Bank branding there, just to kind of paint a little bit of a picture. Michigan State and MSU Federal Credit Union have a patch deal. All 23 of Michigan State's varsity teams will wear MSU FCU logo patch for the next 10 years, so it's a 10-year deal, in what is believed to be the longest tenured deal to date, which, as far as I know, this is the longest tenured deal. The Detroit News reported that the deal is valued in the range of $40 million total. So $40 million over 10 years. It's not terrible, but it's also not great either. I mean, it's probably the second worst that I've seen so far, only ahead of the Big 12's deal with Monster right now, but yeah. MSU FCU was founded by Michigan State faculty and staff in 1937. So I think that is part of the reason why Michigan State signed with MSU Federal Credit Union. And the last Big Ten school as of right now to have made a patch deal is Wisconsin and Culver's. Culver's is going to have its logo on the jerseys of Badger football, men's basketball, and men's hockey teams this year. The deal's value hasn't been made public, but the school said it will also create new NIL, and unique content creation opportunities. So that is interesting. The fact that the financials have not yet been released. In previous broadcasts, I think probably in like March, when Wisconsin had a special deal with the state government to basically fund their athletic programs, they have that going for them. So I am curious to see how this Wisconsin and Culver's deal pans out, or at least, financially what it looks like. But yeah, a big part of the reason why Culver's and Wisconsin paired together is because Culver's, as I'm sure a lot of you guys know, is based in Wisconsin. So I think, having Culver's on the patch just makes sense. Culver's is also already the on-court logo partner for the school's Kohl Center, and that's where basketball and hockey are played. And there has been some frustration online already regarding the contrast between Culver's bright blue logo and Wisconsin's bright red jerseys. And, kind of going back to that, in the Big Ten Media Day with the Ohio State JP Morgan Chase thing, there was a whole thing where Ryan Day was like, oh, I don't want the blue on the Ohio State jersey because, it's Michigan's color is blue. So he's like, no blue on the jersey. And JP Morgan Chase is like, no. We're not going to do blue. So, yeah, Culver's could change the color. They could make it not blue, I guess, if they wanted to. They could make it white on the red jerseys and maybe blue on the red ones. But, yeah, that's pretty much that right now. Moving on to the SEC, as of right now, has 2 member schools that have signed patch deals. You have Arkansas and Tyson Foods. And just kind of going into this, it's a multi-year jersey patch agreement. It includes placement on the uniforms of all 19 men's and women's varsity Razorback teams. Tyson Foods is an Arkansas-based food production brand, and it's a giant that we see a lot now in today's day and age. It's going to serve as the school's official protein partner. While the deal's terms have not been made public, Tyson Foods chairman John Tyson has dismissed reports of a $100 million valuation earlier this year, which would be a ton of money for the School of Arkansas and their athletic programs. That would be a lot. That would be one of the biggest deals in, possibly even bigger than Notre Dame's. But it would be one of the biggest deals or patch deals as of right now. So there is a lot of potential there, but as of right now, we don't know the financial details of that bill, of the, I keep saying bill, and I mean the patch deal. I mean deal. And the other SEC school that has made a deal is LSU and Woodside Energy. This was first reported by FOS in 2025, and this is before patch deals were even approved by the NCAA. So this is already interesting. LSU with their collusion, I guess. But anyways, the multi-year, multi-million-dollar deal pairing was made official in February, and it's actually the first major deal of the jersey patch era. Woodside Energy's logo will feature on the uniforms of all 21 LSU athletic programs. So, from what I'm looking at, there is still no financial details of how much LSU is going to be making, how many years the deal is. None of that. I haven't been able to find that information. Then the ACC, the only ACC school right now that has a patch deal is Cal Berkeley. And Cal has a deal with DialPad. All 30 Cal programs are going to wear the DialPad logo. And DialPad, for those of you that don't know, which I did not know, before today is an AI platform for customer experience. Dialpad was also named the official AI platform for fan experience of Cal Athletics, and what the university described as the largest corporate partnership in its history. And the value of the deal has not been disclosed yet, but it is definitely an interesting partnership to have, considering the fact at the graduation ceremonies last year, one of the biggest stories surrounding all the graduation ceremonies was the fact that people talking about AI in a positive way were getting booed in their commencement speeches. So I think this could potentially be a dangerous partnership for Cal Berkeley in terms of, I guess, approval. But financially, this could be a pretty big deal because, AI is making more money right now. So it is what it is. Moving on to the Big 12. We have 3 Big 12 member schools that have deals. We have BYU and Entrada, Oklahoma State, and Osage Nation, and Kansas and Ripple. So BYU and Entrada, which, first of all, I'm surprised that it was not Crumble Cookie, because with the whole James Franklin thing, Crumble for some reason became a big part of it, and they were trending throughout that whole thing. And I remember talking about it, but it was so long ago that the story is kind of slipping my mind right now. But anyways, I would have thought that Crumble, which is one of the biggest companies in the entire world, would have tried to get a patch on the BYU jerseys. But, oh well. For now, the multi-year jersey patch partnership is football only. Entrada is a property management software company that was founded by BYU students in 2003. So I did not know that. That is new information. As part of the deal, the company is going to collaborate with the athletic program on community initiatives and create opportunities for student athletes to engage in meaningful service to the community. And like a lot of the deals that I've been talking about the past 10 minutes, the financial terms are not currently available. For Oklahoma State, I'm not sure if it's Osage or Osage Nation, but either way, there is an undisclosed fee. The tribe, which operates a casino and hotel minutes from Oklahoma State's campus, will see its logo on all of the school's uniforms over the next 3 years. And this could potentially be controversial simply because of the casino being involved. And I'm mainly making this point just because of the whole Brendan Sorsby thing and people being upset about gambling in college sports, which, I mean, it's not something that should be done to begin with by the college athletes. But anyways, I think people are possibly going to look at this deal and be like, this is encouraging college kids to go out and gamble. And there is also the other argument where I think it's Osage. Maybe it's Osage. The Osage Nation, they want their logo out, and they can maybe claim that people are being racist and that and all of that. So it's a double-edged sword, in my opinion. Like there's definitely 2 ways that you could go about this signing, but their logo is going to be on all the school's uniforms over the next 3 years. Again, the fee is undisclosed, but yeah, that's one of the patch deals that Oklahoma State has, at least with the Big 12. I mean, obviously the Big 12 has the monster patch deal, and I'll go into that after I talk about the Kansas and Ripple deal and how that kind of hinders Big 12 athletic programs. But anyway, Kansas and Ripple. Ripple is a digital finance company founded by a University of Kansas alum. So a common theme here with a lot of these companies or groups is that they're either in the area that the university is located, or the company or they're founded by university alum. So just keep that in mind when looking at, when you see future patch deals show up on the news, just keep that in mind, I guess. But that is a common theme that I've noticed looking at all of these so far. Anyway, logo for Ripple's cryptocurrency XRP will feature on the Jayhawk jerseys as part of its 5-year agreement with the school. And the value of the deal has, again, not been made public. So, there we go. But yeah, there's also the independent. We've got Notre Dame and SoFi. And everybody probably knows what SoFi is. They are a banking institution and fintech company, and also has naming rights to Los Angeles' professional football stadium through 2039. And they're reportedly going to be paying Notre Dame $18 to $20 million annually in exchange for logo placement on all Fighting Irish uniforms for the next 6 years. So this, as of right now, is by far the biggest deal in all of college football. And I mean, you look at some of the ones that I mentioned before, where yes, they are getting a decent amount of money. Like you look at the Illinois deal, $30 million. That's a lot of money, but it's over the course of 5 years. The Michigan State deal, $40 million total, or it's in the range of $40 million total. But it's for the next 10 years. It's not $40 million per year. Right? So it's not nearly as much as $18 to $20 million annually. That is a huge, huge deal. I mean, Ohio State's deal as of right now is the only one that rivals this deal. But yeah, in exchange for logo placement on all Fighting Irish uniforms for the next 6 years. The agreement is like I said before, this agreement is the largest known college sports jersey patch deal. It's also going to see SoFi establish an annual fund to further Notre Dame's For Forever promise, and that supports all student athletes through scholarships, financial education, career development, and exclusive opportunities. So that's huge. Like that's a huge, huge deal. And it completely trumps the next deal that I am about to talk about, which is a conference-wide agreement, the Big 12. And I already talked about it briefly, and I'm going to correct myself. I've been saying $18 million per year for the Big 12, but it's actually $20 million per year. In exchange for its logo to appear on the football and men and women's basketball jersey. So it's not all programs. It is just football and men's and women's basketball, which all of these schools do have, or all of the member schools do have those programs. Additionally, the Big 12 football and men and women's basketball regular seasons will be referred to as Monster Energy Big 12 football and Monster Energy Big 12 basketball, respectively. Monster Energy logos will appear on Big 12 basketball courts. And there's been a lot of critics on this, like I said before. And many of those critics of the deal are saying its $20 million price tag vastly undervalued the assets in a play for a full conference, which appears to be validated as individual schools like Ohio State and Notre Dame pull in similar figures for their patch partnerships, which, again, that's exactly what I said before. I mean, people are looking at this deal and they're like, what is the Big 12 doing? What are they doing? But here we are. The Big 12 is just kind of doing its own thing, I guess. And I don't know. I mean, it's like when you're a conference like the Big 12, like if I'm the Big 12, I would not let anybody undervalue me more than I already am undervalued by, like the Big 10 and SEC, right? Like people already see the Big 12 under the Big 10 and SEC, but that doesn't mean you should let companies take advantage just to get a headline, right? That's not the way you should be thinking as a business. You need you need to make decisions that ultimately will help you get to that level of the Big Ten and SEC. You want to be that third established conference that people put on the same level as the Big Ten and SEC. You don't want to be a step below. If you're a step below and you make a deal like the Big 12 made with its $20 million a year with Monster, I mean, you're undervaluing yourself at that point. And yeah, I mean, I don't really know how else I can explain it, but you undervalue yourself. How do you expect to be seen in the same light as the Big Ten and the SEC when you do have schools and athletic programs where they can make deals for themselves that would make them a bunch of money? I mean, I talked about BYU and Crumble earlier, like as a potential thing. Crumble is founded by a BYU alum. Like, come on. I mean, it's ridiculous. I mean, Cincinnati is one of those schools where I think they could have a sneaky good deal come in for them. They came in as one of the smaller Big 12 schools when they left the American Athletic Conference a few years ago, but now they're already kind of on par with everybody else, and I think it's largely due to the fact that they have a well-managed athletic department. But yeah, I mean, there's just so much potential that the Big 12 could have, and it just kind of screws itself over so many times. And it starts with the commissioner up top and, the people that are above the athletic directors and the university presidents and those people. I mean, it's I get that they're trying to adapt, but you have to make it so that way you can succeed. I just feel like the Big 12 is holding itself back. I mean, there's so much potential with the Big 12 conference, and I've said that for a while, but I still think it's true. I mean, I still think the Big 12 has potential to catch up to the Big 10 and SEC, but with a deal like that, it's holding itself back. With that being said, we're going to move on to the Protect College Sports Act update. So, I did a little brief preview at the beginning of the show talking about how it's the final text has been sent to the senators for review and a floor vote, and potentially, and it will potentially be voted on as soon as this week, though time is ticking with the month-long congressional recess in August set to commence on Friday. So we could see something happen. We could also see it be pushed back. And honestly, at this point, I would not be surprised if it gets pushed back just because of all the other things that are going on within politics and the world. At this point, the bill has not been moved for cloture, like I said before. And that just pretty much just means to be voted on the Senate floor. Among some of the pressing items that I mentioned before are the sanctions on Russia for its ongoing war in Ukraine, as well as for a temporary measure to continue funding the government through the end of the year, just stuff like that, that are completely out of my depth. If the Protect College Sports Act does receive cloture this week, that process could still take days or weeks, especially with a legislative logjam. A person did talk about it and they requested anonymity, but on the heels of last week's near death of the bill, late at night, it was endorsed by both the Big Ten and the SEC conferences on July 31st. As expected, the revamped bill includes major concessions, first deemed in order to obtain support from the Big Ten and SEC, but as noted on Monday by a U.S. Senate Commerce Committee, aid changes were made to address a number of concerns, not just from those two conferences. So there's that. A notable inclusion in the bill is Section 110, which is the rules governing certain midseason coaching transitions, or as I'm sure some of you guys have probably heard it referred to as the Lane Kiffin rule. And the reason why that's referred to is because of Lane Kiffin's coaching transition from last year, where he transitioned from the Ole Miss job to LSU right at the end of the season, and ultimately was not allowed to coach in the college football playoffs due to him transitioning to LSU. The bill language discusses only college football coaches and includes this element for penalizing a coach or institution in violation of the provision should the Protect College Sports Act eventually be voted into law. The determination of eligibility is also one that there was a little bit of changes. An individual described in a person who accepts employment, appointment, or designation as head coach of a varsity sports team for intercollegiate football at another institution during the same competitive season is ineligible to participate in intercollegiate athletic competition for intercollegiate football as head coach for the hiring institution through the conclusion of the competitive season, including any postseason competition of the prior institution or the hiring institution, whichever occurs later. So essentially, they basically said, yes, if you leave a team for another team, you cannot coach your previous team in the postseason or in any other games after that, which makes sense. I don't think anybody would argue that should not be the case. The bill also continues to provide protection against a so-called Super League, which I've brought up a couple of times, where the Big Ten and SEC have talked about creating their own Super League. And it's just to damp down the potential for additional seismic conference realignment when some leagues' current multimedia rights deals, specifically the Big Ten, in 2030 expire. Transfer rules that could be enacted with the bill include a single one-time transfer without penalty, as well as exceptions for when a head coach departs, a sport is discontinued, sexual assault or harassment occurs, or the athlete pursues graduate studies. The bill would also include a national registry for agents who wish to represent college student athletes, to include a public agent database. It also seeks to enforce a harsher recruitment and tampering guidelines. And those are already pretty strict to begin with, but they're going to make them even harsher. And that basically just means that we're going to be we're going to be very heavily enforcing these rules. The harsher they are, the easier it is to enforce. I mean, you look at like some of the rules that have been mentioned were already kind of a thing within the NCAA. It's just there were loopholes that people would take around those rules in order to get what they wanted. But yeah, and then lastly, we're going to talk about Section 203, which that part of the bill addresses sports broadcasting continuing to confer antitrust protection for collective college sports broadcast negotiations, as well as local market level broadcast access for college football and college basketball games. So in plain terms, or in layman's terms, an Ohio State game originating in Columbus, Ohio, or University of Texas football or basketball game being conducted in Austin, Texas, must be available for general market viewership in that originating location. So there's that. And I think that's something that I didn't even really think about, but I think it's something that needed to be said. Like, it just allows more people, at least within the area, to watch. But on that note, that is all that I have time for today. Next week, gonna lean more into the preseason of college football. If there's any updates with the Protect College Sports Act, with whether or not the bill gets passed into law, I will have that update for you. And yeah, if you weren't able to make it right at 2 today, you can always go back on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, and Millions.co and other podcasting platforms in order to go back and listen to what you missed. And yeah, with that being said, I'll see you guys all next week. Really excited for college sports to begin again. And with that, Schlyde out.